a special guest here today, and I know you recognize her, Christy, and she's with Corner Escrow, and I say her last name, but I always pronounce it wrong.
De La Torre, yes.
Thank you.
She says it
I always
wrong.
say De La Toro.
Yes, yes.
I don't know, it's Toro Bull, right?
Yeah.
And she goes after it, I'll tell you. But I had some questions I thought I'd ask that I bet everybody out there has, and if they don't, they should. So, are you ready?
I think so. I hope I can answer them.
I wouldn't ask you anything you couldn't answer. So, talking about closing costs in escrow. When you have a lender involved and you want to do a reduction in price, or a reduction, some sort of a
Credit,
a credit.
Yeah. So lenders want anything to be applied towards closing costs. So let's say the seller wants to give the buyer $10,000 towards closing cost, or a credit because they wanted to reduce the price and there's negotiations going on. A lender will only allow that cost to be towards closing costs. So if the buyer only has $5,000 in closing costs, they cannot take that full $10,000 credit. They would have to adjust it to $5,000, and that's all escrow can give to the buyer. And a lot of times people ask for a $50,000 credit, and it's not possible to be done through escrow. So sometimes the agents will have to negotiate reducing the price or finding another way to apply this credit. But lenders only allow for closing costs to be applied towards it.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a specific type of closing costs,
There's non-recurring closing
Right.
costs, and there's recurring closing costs.
Right.
So if it's an escrow fee, a title fee, it's not going to occur again. But recurring costs are like prorations of taxes, interest of the loan. Those are things that keep occurring. So are recurring. So that's what you could apply them towards.
Right, only non-recurring closing
Some
costs.
lenders will only allow non-recurring depending on the type of loan, but some will allow recurring and
non-recurring.
Yes. So there's ways to get a lot of closing costs with interest and in pounds and.
Well, and they can also pay realtor fees. So the buyer could also pay realtor fees, and that would reduce the.
Yeah, that would go towards closing costs.
Right.
You could just negotiate the contract a little bit different.
A little bit differently.
Yeah. There's ways to do it, but a lot of times people go into escrow and they just think they're just going to get a credit, but that's important to know as a seller and a buyer, and who pays what costs, so you know what they could be applied towards. So before you negotiate a credit, it's good to know how much the buyer has in closing costs.
Well, if a buyer paid realtor fees, then their goal would be to lower the cost of the house so that they pay less taxes in the long run, right?
Yep, taxes on property taxes on capital gains taxes.
All sorts of taxes,
yes. So there's ways to go about it, but always talk to an escrow person before you just write an addendum for a $50,000 credit to buyer, because sometimes I could help you figure out the best way to apply that credit.
Perfect. And everybody's probably heard the saying, March comes in like a lien, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe you can talk about when taxes are actually due and when taxes start becoming a lien on the property, because those are two different dates, right?
Yes, so taxes are a little bit different as they run on a fiscal year from July to July. So first half, which it seems like it should be second half, because July, let's say 23-24, last year, July 1st to December 31st is the first installment. Well, it's the second half of the year, so people don't understand that the taxes are, not due until December. They're actually due November 1st, delinquent December 10th for the first installment. Second installment is due February 1st, delinquent April 10th for the second installment, and that runs from January 1st through July 2024. So when you're closing an escrow, the prorations are most likely not going to make sense to anyone. I know how to do them and explain them, but when you pay April 10th, when they're late, you're actually paying for a little bit in the rear and a little bit forward. So depending on the close date is how we determine if we're going to pay the taxes and prorate backwards and credit the seller, or have the buyer take on the taxes.
And you actually do it from the time that they start ticking away, right? And not from when they're actually due, but the amount that is, because the dates are totally different.
Yeah, so we do it off the 6th month. So if the seller paid, let's say, taxes today, they would be paid up and through July. So they're not going to own the property if they close. So they need that money back. So I will credit them through the escrow, and then buyer will have to pay the following November 1st taxes at the end of this year if they're due again.
Exactly.
So right now they're not due. They're actually due today, or February 1st. They're due. They're late April 10th. So a lot of people haven't made their payments yet. So I'll pay them through escrow for closing within the next month, and then give a credit back to the seller for the time they don't own the property.
Yes.
It is.
So it's the dates are just messed up. You'd think it'd be due January 1st, right?
Yeah.
Because
to make it easy.
To make it easy,
it would be
yeah.
that way.
Nope, nothing's easy.
It's pretty hard.
So, okay, so this will be a good one for you. Why is it important to have a reputable escrow company?
Well, because they'll prorate your taxes correctly, and you won't have to worry about it.
Well, what about insurance? I always check insurance.
Yeah, there's a lot of extra insurance that our company has as an independent, one of the larger independent companies. There's cyber insurance, there's E&O insurance, there's tons of insurance. We're dealing with millions of dollars, so we want to make sure our customers are covered, we're covered as escrow officers, and we have certain staff above us, our corporate office, that reviews everything and audits us as escrow officers, so that way we're held to the highest standards, even in our own company. So I'm really confident that we try to stay with the most insurance and the most audits, internally.
I really feel insurance is critical. I always ask insurance when somebody calls out an escrow company I've never heard of. I'm going, well, number one, I will never do an escrow company that's broker owned, right? You always have to do a DOC, to me.
Yeah.
You always have to have adequate insurance for the client.
Yeah, for the client and for everybody in the transaction.
Everybody, even the brokers,
yes.
Right? And I mean, there's just a lot of, there's a checklist of things that escrow companies need to have in order to be of the highest level.
Yeah, and I'm glad our company is. And I wouldn't work for any company that didn't have those qualifications, because again, I wouldn't be able to get, all my agents that are higher end, or any agent that has a lot of business, that they're going to be smart and ask for these things. And I'm not going to lose a deal because I don't have the proper, highest insurance out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
very important.
I'm glad I have that.
Well, Christy, thank you so much for coming. And I know we'll have you back on the show very soon,
All
right?
Yes, of course. It's my pleasure. I love doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Oh.